Hi, welcome to Data Science Academy channel. My name is Clara Raphael. In previous video, we learned about data modeling and relationships in Power BI. So for today, we're going to be practicalizing what we learned in the previous video by building our data model from scratch using real life example. To illustrate this, we're going to be working with data set that houses scores of students in a data analytics course. And this data set contains the field student ID, first name, last name, course title, the course ID, the assignment name, and the scores. Before we go ahead to do anything, we need to identify what our fact is from this table and what our dimensions are from this table. In the previous video, we were meant to understand that facts are the quantitative and measurable data. Looking at our data set here, we can see that scores is actually the fact in this data set because it represents the performance of it, of each student in this particular academy, right? And also, performance is something that is quantitative and performance is also measurable. So this has satisfied the condition to meet a fact. Then we go ahead to identify the dimensions in this data set. Since this data is collected to assess the performance of students in each course, we can safely say that the dimensions are students and costs. So let's look at it in this way. We can actually analyze the performance. So when I mean performance, I'm talking about score. We can actually analyze the performance of each student, right? Or we can analyze the performance in each course. Or we can also be multiple dimensional and say, let's analyze the performance of each student in a course or in each courses. So since we've been able to establish that, then we'll build our data model or our conceptual data model. Now, building a conceptual data model is just like an illustration of what you would want it to be and defining what each table should have and how the relationship would go. So to build a conceptual data model, we're going to use a smart art graphics to achieve that. So I'm going to be working with this and I click on OK. So now we have our conceptual model demo or conceptual model draft. So if you look at this is actually representing what we saw in the structure of a star schema, right? With the fact table being in the middle and it is surrounded by different dimensions table and now linked to the dimensions table through a direct relationship. So now let's define what our data model looks like. We've already established that scores represent the facts. Then for the dimensions, we have students and courses. And you remember also that dimensions table actually gives us context or describes attributes to the data. So anything contained in your dimensions table should be more of a descriptive feature than a quantitative feature. So we are going to rename this as scores because it represents the fact table. To be more descriptive, let's make it scores fact, right? To show it is a fact table. Then we define the dimensions table, which is student, right? And course. So now we have our dimensions table defined and our facts table defined. We have built a conceptual model. If you look at it, you can see that the scores, which is the fact table, is at the middle, while the students and the course dimension surround the fact table, and they are being linked in a kind of relationship. So the kind of relationship we are hoping to get from this data model is the one to many relationship, because that is a recommended type of relationship you need to have for your data model. Now that we've identified our facts and our dimensions, we need to list what should be in our students table, what should be in our cost table, and what should be in our facts table. So we're going to start with the students. So for our student table, what should we have in it? First of all, let's go back to our data. So everything that pertains to students should be found in the student table, right? From our data set, the information that can give us or that can tell us the person is a student is the person's ID, the person's first name, and last name, right? So that should be the content of the student table. So we have students ID, first name, and last name. So let's define our course table. Going back to our data set now, we can also see that the information that should be related to course is what? The course ID and the course table. So this will tell us a particular course that the student took, right? So we have course ID, then the course title. So now we have defined what should be in the student dimension table and the course dimension table. Then we'll define what should be in this course dimension, this course fact table. So what is course fact? Going back to our data set, everything actually represents this course. But to define our course table, first of all, we need the score, right? Score, not score facts, score. Then also we need to know the students, right? So which students actually had a particular score. So now that we already have a student table, what we need is just the student ID so that we can have a fragment or information about the student on the fact table. If you want to see more details or more information about the student, you will definitely look up the ID from the student table, right? Then for other fields, we also need to have information about the course because each student takes a course, right? And what should go in the fact table is the course ID alone. That's because we want to store information about the course on on this course table as well. Then lastly, we would have the assignments. Right. So these are the contents of the um, course table. And if you look at it, we've successfully captured all the information from the data set, right? From the student's ID to the course feature. Now we know or we have an idea how we want our data model to be and the fields that should be contained in each table. We head over to Power BI to create this data model and create the relationship. So let's head over to Power BI. Now we are in Power BI. The next thing you might want to do is, first of all, to bring in the data. So I go to my Get Data and I'm connecting to an Excel workbook. I click on Excel workbook. It takes me to my file directory. I have it saved here. So I do this and bring it in. So it's connecting to my data source. Great. So I want to bring in just my scores because that is what contains, or let's use this table instead. That is what contains the information I'm interested in. Then I transform data because I still need to do one or two transformation on this data set. Now we have our data in. Our data looks a bit clean. So we will work with this called table and design our data model from scratch. So going back to our conceptual data model, we see that we should have three tables and we define the fields that should be presented in the table. So we are going to first of all duplicate this table into three. So I right click and duplicate and duplicate again. So one should be the scores table. Come here to rename it. So let's have this as score facts. Then this should be students dimension. And the last but not the least is our word course dimension. Now we've defined each table. We need to just make sure that what is contained in each table are actually what we have defined earlier. So starting with course, we say we want our course to just contain the course ID and the course title. So from this data, we have to take out all the columns and leave only the course ID and the course title. So I'm going to highlight these two because those are the ones I'm interested in and I remove other columns, right? So now we have our course title, course ID. So our our course table is almost ready. The next thing we need to do is to make sure that the content in this table actually has a unique entry. We don't want to see multiple entries on the dimension table. So to achieve this, I actually remove my duplicates. So I remove those and remove my duplicates. So we can see now we just have one entry or one unique entry. Heading over to the student dimension table, can see here that we've defined a student table to just contain student ID, first name, last name. So let's go back to our table and select this student ID, first name, hold my shift and highlight, then I remove other columns. Now our student table is almost ready as well. The next thing we need to do is to make sure that there are not duplicate entries because it is a dimension table. So to do that, I go to remove my duplicate and you can see I just have my students, the first name, last name, and the same ID, right? Then heading over to the fact table, which contains the scores. Going back to our drawing board again, we can see that we just need the score, the student ID, course ID, and what assignment. And we don't need all of these details here because we've already defined them in the dimensions table. So for this, we are going to just select the ones we are interested in. I like my student ID, my course ID, my assignment, and scores. Then I remove other columns. Great. So now this is what our fact table looks like. So unlike what we did for the dimensions table, we would leave this like this. I would leave a fact table to have multiple entries because it is permitted. It actually records the details and give us what really went down. So we can say student 101 took course CS01, did assignment 1, and scored 57 in assignment 1 for this course, right? So that is the details we are talking about. I can also see Student 101 still also went ahead and did the assignment 2 for this particular course, did the assignment 3 for this particular course, and scored really high for the second one, but pretty low for the third one. So, and it goes on like that. Now that we have actually defined the tables in our data model, then we would go back and create the relationship in Power BI. So I load my data back to Power BI. Great. Now we'll head over to the model view to create our relationship. As you can see, Power BI has actually automatically helped us create this relationship. But we are going to be creating it by ourselves so that we understand the concept. So what I will do is delete, yes, and delete, yeah. So we have our tables loaded in, our scores, facts, student time, and course time. So how are these tables related? Let's go back to our drawing board. Um, for you to connect two tables together, there should be a unique identifier. And what is a unique identifier? Any entry or field you can find in the first table and also the second table. So a unique identifier is what will help us establish establish that relationship. Now, let's connect our facts and student dimension table. So the common entry here is the student ID, right? So we have student ID on the fact table, student ID on the dimension table. So what we can do is what drop and our relationship is created. Then coming to the cause and the fact, the common entries here, so is the course ID, right? So we have ID. So we drag and drop exactly on the ID column on the fact table. And you can see the relationship is created. One thing you need to understand is that one entry tree in this dimension tables actually matches up to multiple entries on the fact table. So that is why we have a one to many relationship, one to many, or you can say many to one relationship that is created between these tables. I hope I've been able to demystify and help you understand the concept of data modeling in Power BI. Thank you for watching.